I was listening to Our Daily Bread the other day, and it really sparked this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
We often hear about all the positive things about faith, right? Like hope and community
Right.
and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But what about the more challenging parts? The parts that ask us to maybe step outside our comfort zones
Yeah.
or even sacrifice some things.
Well, it is interesting that the material that we're diving into today really tackles this head on.
Yeah.
It kind of flips the script on the idea that faith is like a magic bullet for a perfect life.
Right, exactly.
And instead, it paints this picture of transformation.
Yeah,
And that sometimes involves going through some tough stuff.
it does.
Yeah.
Well, and the text even uses this powerful phrase, walking against the tide of what the world values. It really resonated with me because it implies that genuine faith might require us to go against the flow,
Yeah.
to make choices that aren't always popular or easy.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it makes you think,
What if that upstream swim is where the real growth happens?
that's a good question.
Yeah, what if those challenges actually lead to the most significant rewards?
Right.
It's like we're being asked to confront those parts of ourselves
Yeah.
that might be holding us back.
Yeah. Well, the source material starts off strong, I think, by saying Christianity isn't about self-improvement, it's about surrender. Now, that's a bit of a reality check, right?
Yeah.
In our world of self-help and constant striving for betterment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
What if true spiritual growth actually means letting go of the need to control everything? Maybe even surrendering some of our ego-driven desires.
Oh, yeah.
The text talks about becoming a new creation,
Right.
which implies a radical shift, not just polishing up the old self.
That's like hitting the reset button.
Exactly.
And they even quote 2 Corinthians 5:17.
Yeah.
Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here.
It's powerful. So if we're truly embracing this idea of new creation, what parts of the old self might be the hardest to let go of?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
That's where the surrender comes in, right? It's about taking a hard look at those parts of ourselves that are maybe clinging to worldly values.
Yeah.
Maybe even some habits or beliefs that don't align with a life of faith.
Right.
It could be different for everybody.
Yeah.
What might be a stumbling block for one person could be easy for someone else.
Right.
It's a personal journey of recognizing what we need to let go of
Yeah.
to create space for something new to emerge.
Yeah. I can see that. For me, it might be my need to always be right, Or maybe it's that little voice that's constantly comparing myself to others.
Right.
How about you? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I think for me, it's about letting go of that constant drive for achievement and productivity, That feeling of needing to be doing something all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a subtle form of control. And sometimes I feel like it prevents me from simply being present and open to what God might be doing.
Yeah. Well, and the source material even goes on to say that this process of surrender isn't always comfortable, right? It can be downright tough, even painful at times.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not about becoming some perfect emotionless robot,
Right.
but recognizing our weaknesses and being willing to work on them.
Yeah.
Maybe even with a little help from above.
Exactly.
And that kind of leads us to another thought-provoking point, I think.
Okay.
The role of challenges and suffering in this whole transformation process.
Okay.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The text throws out this idea. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Okay, hold on a second. Rejoice in suffering.
Yeah.
That doesn't exactly sound like your typical, feel-good message.
Right.
I don't know.
It seems counterintuitive.
It does. But what if those unavoidable bumps in the road, the tough times we all face, are actually opportunities for growth?
That's the question.
Yeah.
And it's not about seeking out suffering,
Right.
but it's about shifting our perspective on it.
Okay, so how can hardship actually strengthen faith? Wouldn't it be more likely to make someone question their beliefs?
I think it all comes down to perspective.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
When everything's going smoothly,
Yeah.
it's easy to rely on ourselves, our own strength,
Yeah.
our smarts.
Yeah.
But when we hit those rough patches,
Yeah.
we're kind of forced to acknowledge our limitations.
Right.
To recognize that we don't have all the answers.
Right.
And sometimes that's when we're most open to seeking guidance
Right.
and support
Yes.
from something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. It's like when you're going through a really tough time and suddenly those platitudes about faith and hope start to make a little more sense.
Right?
Yeah. It's not about finding easy answers,
Uh-huh.
but about finding the strength to keep going.
Absolutely. In those moments of vulnerability,
Yeah.
our faith can actually deepen. We
Yeah.
learn to lean on something beyond our own understanding.
Mm.
Maybe even tap into a source of strength we didn't know we had.
This reminds me of a time when I went through a major setback in my career.
Uh-huh.
It was incredibly challenging, but looking back, it was also a period of immense personal growth. It forced me to reevaluate my priorities, my definition of success,
Right.
and ultimately it brought me closer to my faith.
Yeah, that's a powerful example of how challenges, while difficult,
Yeah.
can actually lead to unexpected growth.
Right.
And it ties into this next concept the text highlights,
Okay.
redefining success.
Right. The source material contrasts worldly success. You know, money, status, achievements,
Yeah.
with the values Jesus emphasized.
Right.
Things like love, humility, service to others.
Absolutely.
Talk about a different perspective.
It is.
Right. It's like we're being asked
Yeah.
to question what we truly value.
Yeah, and it challenges us to think, what if true success isn't about what we accumulate,
Right.
but about how we live, how we treat others,
Yeah.
the impact we make on the world around us?
Yeah.
What if it's about those things that have eternal significance
Right.
rather than just temporary gains?
Yeah. This is a big one to unpack.
Right.
The text even quotes Matthew 6.1921,
Okay.
where Jesus talks about storing up treasures in heaven, not on earth.
Uh-huh.
It's not about being poor. It's about where your heart is.
Right.
You know, if that were truly our goal,
Yeah.
how would our everyday choices be different?
It is a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And it leads us to the next challenging aspect of faith.
Okay.
That the text explores this idea of love that goes beyond warm, fuzzy feelings
Okay.
and requires real action.
All right.
But we'll dive into that after a quick break.
Sounds good.
So before the break, we were talking about redefining success. And that leads us to another challenging aspect of faith.
Okay.
This idea of love that goes beyond just those warm, fuzzy feelings
Right.
and actually requires real action.
It's more than just saying, I love you,
Right.
or giving someone a hug.
Absolutely.
This text talks about a deeper kind of love,
Mm-hmm.
a love that might require us to sacrifice something,
Yeah.
to act, even when it's difficult or inconvenient.
It's a love that's rooted in action.
Right.
In a commitment to serving others. And that can sometimes mean putting their needs before our own,
Yeah.
even when it's hard.
Right.
Even when those people may not be able to give us anything in return.
One of the most powerful examples the text uses is the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. It's always been such a striking image for me.
Right.
Here's the Son of God humbling himself to perform this simple act of service for his followers.
Yeah.
It really challenges our ideas about what leadership and love look like.
It goes against our natural inclinations, doesn't it?
It does.
We tend to gravitate towards people who make us feel good, who
Wow.
affirm us, who can do something for us.
Yeah.
But the love that Jesus models here is different.
Right.
It's about recognizing the inherent worth of every person,
Mhm.
regardless of their status or what they can do for us.
This reminds me of something I heard recently about a local soup kitchen, where business executives and community leaders volunteer to serve meals to those in need. They're not doing it for recognition or personal gain.
Right.
It's a genuine act of service,
Yeah.
putting aside their own comfort to meet the needs of others.
That's a great example of this type of love in action.
Yeah.
And it connects to the text point about loving our enemies
Right.
and those who can't repay us.
Yeah.
It's about extending compassion and understanding even to those who might be difficult to love,
Right.
those who might even be considered our opponents.
It makes you think about all the times we hold back love because we're afraid of getting hurt or taken advantage of.
Yeah.
What if we chose to love more freely, even when it feels risky?
That's a good question.
What impact could that have on our relationships and even the world around us?
Those are important questions.
Yeah.
And the text reminds us that this kind of love, while challenging, is ultimately the path to true fulfillment.
Right.
It's in giving of ourselves that we find ourselves. And this brings us to another challenging but transformative concept.
Okay.
The idea of dying to self.
This is where the text uses some pretty intense imagery.
Yeah.
It quotes Galatians 2:12. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Okay, crucified. That's a powerful word.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean in a practical, everyday sense?
It's a metaphor for the ongoing process of surrendering our ego
Okay.
and allowing our faith to shape our thoughts, our actions, our motivation.
Right.
It's not about literally dying,
Right.
but about choosing to let go of those parts of ourselves that are rooted in selfishness, pride, or a desire to control everything.
So it's like those little daily deaths.
Exactly.
We choose to put aside our own wants or comforts for the sake of something bigger, something more meaningful.
Absolutely.
It could be as simple as choosing to listen patiently to a friend who's going through a tough time,
Right.
even when you're busy or tired. It could be biting your tongue instead of getting into an argument, or letting go of anger or resentment towards someone who's hurt you.
It's about those moments where we choose to act in alignment with our values, even when it feels counterintuitive
Right.
or requires us to go against our natural inclinations.
It's about recognizing that true fulfillment doesn't always come from getting what we want,
Right.
but from living a life that's aligned with a higher purpose.
Exactly.
And that purpose could be different for everyone.
Right.
It could be about serving your family, your community, or dedicating yourself to a cause you believe in.
Absolutely.
So this concept of dying to self isn't just about religious sacrifice.
Right.
It's about tapping into a deeper part of ourselves, a part that's connected to something larger than our individual ego. It's about recognizing that true freedom and joy often come from living a life that's focused on something beyond just ourselves.
Exactly.
And that leads us to another fascinating aspect of the text.
Okay.
The idea that even in the midst of challenges and sacrifices, there's a profound sense of hope and joy that comes from living a life of faith. This reminds me of those stories you hear about people who have faced incredible adversity, loss, or hardship,
Yeah.
but find a way to maintain their faith and even experience joy amidst their struggles.
It's almost paradoxical, isn't it?
It is,
But the text suggests that this joy isn't dependent on our circumstances.
right?
It's a deeper sense of peace and purpose that comes from knowing we're not alone in our struggles, that there's a greater power at work even in the midst of difficulty.
So it's not about denying the pain or pretending that everything is okay.
Right.
It's about finding a source of strength and hope that allows us to persevere even when things are tough.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah?
And it brings us to another important point that the text highlights:
Go ahead.
the power of community and support in this journey of faith.
The text talks about the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who share our values and can encourage us in our faith.
Right.
It's about finding a community where we can be authentic, where we can be vulnerable, and where we can support each other through the challenges and triumphs of life.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing that we weren't meant to go through this alone.
Yeah.
There's strength in numbers, and there's a unique kind of comfort and encouragement that comes from sharing this journey with others who understand what we're going through.
So if we're tying all of this together,
Yeah.
it seems like the text is suggesting that a life of faith isn't about avoiding hardship or seeking comfort.
Right.
It's about embracing the challenges, finding strength and surrender, and discovering a deeper kind of joy and fulfillment that comes from living for something bigger than ourselves.
That's a great summation.
Yeah.
And it leads to the final point that the text emphasizes.
Okay.
The idea that this journey of faith, with all its challenges and sacrifices,
Yeah.
ultimately leads to a sense of purpose and meaning that transcends our earthly existence.
That's right. So before the break, we were talking about how a life of faith often means embracing challenges and finding strength and surrender.
And how that can ultimately lead to a deeper sense of joy and fulfillment that comes from living for something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And this brings us to the final point the text emphasizes. The idea that this journey of faith, with all its challenges and sacrifices, ultimately leads to a sense of purpose and meaning that transcends our earthly existence.
It's like saying the rewards of faith aren't just about this life, but extend beyond that into something bigger, something eternal.
The text uses the analogy of a seed. It has to die and be buried in the ground before it can sprout new life. And that new life is something completely different from the original seed.
So we're not just talking about a slightly improved version of ourselves,
Right.
but a complete transformation into something new,
Yeah.
something that aligns with a higher purpose.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
And it suggests that this transformation is a process. It's not something that happens overnight.
Right, and it often involves letting go of things we might be clinging to.
Yeah.
Things that are preventing that seed from truly sprouting and growing.
Absolutely.
It might mean facing our fears, confronting our weaknesses, and making choices that aren't always easy or popular.
Right.
But the text assures us that the rewards are worth it, that the sense of purpose and meaning we find in this journey is unlike anything we could experience in our own strength.
Yeah, it's about tapping into a source of love and strength that's greater than ourselves and allowing that to guide our steps and shape our lives.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground, from surrender and sacrifice to redefining success and finding joy in the midst of challenges.
And while the source material is rooted in Christian beliefs, I think there are some universal truths here that can resonate with anyone, regardless of their background or beliefs.
Yeah, the idea of living for something bigger than ourselves, of finding purpose and meaning in something beyond our own selfish desires, that's something we can all strive for.
Absolutely. It's about connecting to a sense of purpose that transcends our individual ego and recognizing that our actions have an impact on the world around us.
And that even small acts of kindness, moments of choosing love over fear, can make a difference.
We're all part of something bigger, and our choices matter.
This deep dive wasn't about making anyone feel guilty or pressured.
No.
It was about exploring a different perspective and offering some food for thought.
Yeah, if just one idea or concept from this conversation sparked something in you, then it was worth it.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you most? What are you still pondering? Connect with us on social media and share your reflections.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.